Calling the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order for Monday, November 2nd, 2009. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Rick Morrison.
Here.
Nancy Pease. Jim Frederick.
Here.
Connie Yoshimura.
Here.
Tony Jones. Art Isham.
Here.
John Weddleton.
Here.
Bruce Phelps. Stacy Dean.
Here. Thank you. There are minutes this evening. Next order of business is C1 disclosures. Mr. Frederick, if you'd please take care of that, please.
Yes. Ms. Dean, do you have anything to disclose?
Yes, I do. On the case 2009-131, on case 1, I'm involved with a lawsuit with one of the surveyors at that firm, and I'll have to not hear that case.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. You're excused. Mr. Morrison?
Nothing.
Mr. Weddleton?
Nothing.
Mr. Isham?
I have nothing to disclose.
Ms. Yoshimura?
Nothing.
And I have nothing.
Thank you, sir. Before we move on to the consent agenda, as a result of Ms. Dean being excused from case number 2009-131, we will have what we call a short board. In other words, there will only be 5 individuals hearing that particular case. In those situations, the petitioner can decide that they don't want to have the case heard tonight because all it takes is one person disagreeing and it fails. So we can reschedule that particular case for the 14th of December if that's the desire of the petitioner. I don't need an answer right now, but when we finish the consent agenda, I'll come back and ask the petitioner as to what their desires are. So we'll move on to the consent agenda right now. I need a positive motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Okay, very good. It's been moved by Mr. Frederick and seconded by Ms. Dean. Is there any items that anyone wishes to pull?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to pull case 2009-137.
Connie, can you use your microphone, please?
In regards to case 2009-137, I would like to pull that case. I have some questions.
Okay, Mr. Wellington.
I'd like to pull 4C.
Are there any items that would like to be pulled? Additional items? Is there any objections to approving 4B? No objection. That passes. Let's see. Let's go first of all to 4A. Ms. Yoshimura?
My question has to do with if there is an amendment to a conditional use permit, does that trigger, for example, a landscaping review?
Through the chair, Ms. Yoshimura, no. The landscaping has been met. It's been signed off on, so that is not subject to reopening.
So Are you talking about the existing landscaping plan from when the case was originally approved back in the 1990s, or are you talking about a revised plan?
I'm talking about both the original, which was the driving range. Secondly, it was the, I want to call it the clubhouse, which is up above it a little bit to the north.
Right.
And then the third time was when we looked at the air dome. So we have looked at it for each of those new uses.
And the air dome, was that in August of 1999?
Yes, ma'am.
So I drove by today, and there are 8 trees. There are 2 islands in the parking lot that are where the trees are planted. And that's the only landscaping that's there. There's no landscaping at the entrance. There's no landscaping in front of the building. And I'm concerned that it doesn't meet a standard that would have a certain amount of acceptance or aesthetic appeal. Certainly doesn't meet any standards under the new proposed landscaping plans for Title 21 for a building of this size. So is there a way that we could encourage this petitioner to improve his landscaping?
Through the chair, if you'll notice on page 10, there, item number 9, at the bottom was a condition for a revised landscape plan. It met the requirements in 1999. It was signed off on. It was, I believe it was verified by code enforcement. The petitioner is here. You can discuss the condition of the landscaping if you choose, but it is not normally an issue that we would reopen.
If the petitioner is here, is that appropriate?
We can question him.
All right.
Is the petitioner here for this? Thank you, sir. Please come forward and state your name for the record.
I'm Bob Klein from the Northwood Group, petitioner in this case.
Thank you, sir. And Ms. Yoshimura?
Could you describe the landscaping that on item number 10, that your bond shall remain in effect for 3 growing periods to assure survivability of all trees and shrubs and replacement of dead or studded landscape materials? Could you describe the landscaping plan that you submitted? I know it's been 10 years ago, but I didn't see any shrubs. I only saw 8 trees.
Were we talking the one for the dome?
Uh-huh.
The requirement was for 2 islands, and we have more trees than was required in the original planning, and there was no shrubs required in that one. And there's a 50-foot natural landscaping buffer between the dome and the frontage road that's been in place since we built the original driving range. And that was the original requirement for leaving that buffer. Most of that land is wetlands, and so there's only a very limited amount of things you can do. All of the land to the north of the entry is patterned down A wetlands, and everything to the south is either A or B. But they only required 2 islands with I think it's 1 deciduous and 3 coniferous trees.
Right. And that's what you have.
That's what we have.
Right. So, if you just stay with me for a minute, Ms. Otero, through the chair, is there any way that we can require more enhanced landscaping, since more people are going to be using this facility. I have no objection to the amendment. I think it's reasonable, I think it's practical, but I would like to see this property enhanced in some way through landscaping so that it could be a little more attractive to the people that are using it.
Through the chair, Ms. Yoshimura, I think that if the petitioner is willing to take another look at it, we can encourage him to do that. I don't know that it can be a requirement, because I believe the bond was satisfied and is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Can I speak for that for a minute?
Yeah.
The challenge with adding any additional landscaping is that there's planting around the entire parking lot now, and the entire parking lot is surrounded by wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
So any planting that we did would reduce parking. And so it's a two-edged sword. If you want to have parking, you can't add more landscaping. And we're at 104 parking spaces right now, and we wouldn't want to sacrifice any parking spaces.
Which is more than what is required. Is that...
It's what was agreed upon when we originally built the dome as the requirement for coming, going, and using.
Okay. What about at the entrance where you have those two big rocks?
Mm-hmm.
Can you put trees in that area, trees and shrubs in that area to have sort of a monument area there?
Well, it would depend on where you put it. The only place they could go is right where the rocks are, because as soon as you get off of that hill, you're in the pattern ground. And you couldn't do anything in that. To the south of the entryway is, it would block the visibility of people leaving the parking lot, and that would not be a good place to plant. To the north of the parking lot where the rocks are, that's maybe 10 feet wide before it drops directly into the swamp.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be
A fairly narrow strip, a fairly long, narrow
Right.
strip that you could add some trees to and some shrubs. You already have the decorative rocks there. You could even put a sign there.
We could put a sign there.
So would you be willing to spruce up your entrance there?
We would be willing to plant our entrance. I'm not sure that we want to put trees there. I don't think we would mind putting shrubs.
Uh-huh.
But trees are problematic. You end up with a brand of tree that you don't particularly want just because the ground is so wet. That's about 30 feet deep to the north of there. And it's a running stream underneath that. The whole entryway is solid, large rock. It's the only way we could make it support itself. But I don't think that, you have black spruce that would be what would grow there. I don't think we want that.
The trees in the island seem to do all right.
The trees in the island are a little bit different situation because they're out of that running flow.
Uh-huh.
And we put a bunch of pretty good stuff underneath them so we could feed them, and we feed them in the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein.
I don't know what it is we can or cannot do, but I certainly would suggest that in the future, if we're amending conditional uses for a commercial recreational use on a property that is of this size, that we look at the landscaping to see how it could possibly be enhanced, because this falls far short of the proposed landscaping requirements for Title 21. So, those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, would you like to go ahead and give us a positive motion?
Do I want to do what?
We need to get this either approved or disapproved, so since you pulled it, I'll let you...
Okay. So, in case number 2009-137, I move for a positive motion, a positive acceptance.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and approved for 2009-137. Is there any objection? No objection. That's unanimously approved.
I can't remember my PIN number. It's been so long.
Just a minute, we're having problems with the system up here. Be patient. Technology is beating us.
Okay.
Are we all set? Yes. There's no objection. There's no objection, so that is unanimous approval. Okay, Mr. Wendleton, case 2009-153.
I had a question to start off with for staff. Is the requirement for the conditional use before they start building, they should get an approval and then start building?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to give me a little more information on the background to your question.
Well, in this case, this is for the 2009-153, where they're building a structure to cover the sand and salt and so on, which sounds reasonable. Mm-hmm. But I just want to know if the rule is that before they build it, that they would get the amendment to the conditional use.
Yes, that is the case. However, there may have been some issue with timing that I'm not aware of, in which case there may have been a proceed at your own risk approval.
So in this letter where it says Rosemont is constructing a single-story metal building in September, so this building may already be built.
I don't know the answer to that. This was Mr. Barrett's case, and I don't know. I can't answer. I'm looking at the aerial photograph on page 6, and it does suggest an area. I would say it's not there based on this aerial.
And this was October 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And we're 5 weeks later, so they may not have started building it, but we don't know.
I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I guess it's similar to Commissioner Yoshimura's issue on the other one, is that, I don't really have a problem with the project, and it seems very reasonable. But it is frustrating to have things come before us that are already really done, which may be the case in this, but we've seen road projects that were put out to bid and ready to roll, and then they come to us for site plan review, and here we have something, the building may already be built. So I'd rather have them follow the rules or not take up our time.
Through the chair, John, I believe that it's a temporary building being converted to a permanent building, and I think that there still is just the temporary building, I think.
That may be. I'm just going off the letter that said that they would start construction in September, and here we have this in front of us in November. If you look at page... Page 9.
Page 9.
But having, I guess, said my piece, I'd move for approval of 2009-153.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick, for seconding that. Is there any objection? No objection. That is approved unanimously. Okay, that completes our consent agenda. As I indicated, I'll now put the question to the petitioner in case 2009-131, Centex Surveying and Engineering, as to whether the case, if they want the case heard tonight, we will, like I said, have a short board. There'll only be 5 of us. So it's your choice. Whoever is the petitioner here? Yes. Could you come forward and please state your name for the record?
My name is Sean Debenham, and we own the lot tonight, and I'll be representing myself, and we'll go ahead and go forward with it.
With the short board?
With the short board.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, in that case, what I'd like to do in this particular situation is I'd like, first of all, don't leave yet. We got to deal with one thing here. I'd like to have a motion to rearrange the agenda so we can hear this case 2009-131 right now, and then deal with the bicycle plan second, so people don't have to sit around and wait for that. So is there a motion to rearrange our agenda so we'll hear the public hearing first?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Is there any objection? Okay, fine. We've rearranged our agenda. We will hear case 2009-131 right now. So, staff, could you please?
Mr. Chairman, there were 59 public hearing notices mailed out. 2 were returned opposed. However, I would note that there were 2 mailings that occurred, and the responses were to the first one, which was a flawed legal, in which we indicated that the request had been for B3 zoning, and that was not the case. This is property south of Raspberry, on the west side of Raspberry Road. It is currently a 4.29 acre parcel, and the petitioner is requesting to rezone approximately half of that, or 2.14 acres, to B1B. If you look at the vicinity map on page 2, what you'll notice is that property to the east is PLI. It's also preservation wetlands. Property to the south is R1. The immediate parcel to the south is owned by Heritage Land Bank. Property to the west is also zoned R1 and consists mainly of mixed residential. To the north, right on the corner of Northwood Raspberry, is B1B SL property. It currently has the Holiday gas station at that location. And north of the road, north of Raspberry, the property is on B3 SL and is undeveloped and does contain a fair bit of wetlands in it. The property has a history of different attempts at rezoning it to B1B, and ultimately that occurred in 1991. The property has also had different lot configurations during that time. It's been at one time there were 3 parcels that made up this 4.29 acres. The proposal by the petitioner has special limitations, which are found on page 7 and 8 of your packet, and he is requesting to prohibit certain uses, provide lighting that is keeps it on property, avoids off-site illumination and impact, asphalt paving of the driveway, low shrubbery, landscaping, to be allowed within a platted 44-foot building setback. And the height would be to 35 feet. If the rezoning were to be approved, it would not become effective until the property was replatted to parcel out the north half of the parcel, which is all that is before the board this evening for rezoning. And the south portion of the parcel would remain the ROSL. I might point out that over the years, the special limitations that have been looked at are all very similar to what we have here that are being proposed. Even when it was B1 BSL in 1991. When the property was rezoned to ROSL, it did repeal that original AO 91-174, and it also it cleaned up the underlying zoning, if you will. Property is owned by Debenham Properties. The property is lies in the area of the West Anchorage planning area, and of course, as we all know, that has not yet been a plan has not actually been started. I take that back. There have been discussions going on, and I think there are some initial efforts underway, but nothing that has come forward to us yet. The draft land use plan map shows the property as a neighborhood center, and the B1B would be consistent with that. We find that it is consistent with policies 1 and 5. There is no adopted neighborhood or district plan, and that it would be compatible in scale with the adjacent uses. The property, as I mentioned, would be adjacent to the existing one-story gas station right at the corner, and that is B1 BSL. Although we have not seen any concept of what that would look like, it would have to conform with Policy 25, which means that it would be neighborhood-oriented. It would, excuse me, be small-scale, and the architectural design would have to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and road pattern activity. The Assembly did recognize and have long recognized that this area of Northwood and Raspberry was an appropriate area for some small-scale type of commercial activity. And the proposal that is before you this evening would be similar to what had previously been approved. In fact, what they're asking is essentially to go back to B1B SL zoning from 2007. We find that the zoning map amendment does conform with the Transportation and Drainage, Public Service and Facility. We, I believe, are suggesting on page 13 that should be some additional uses added to those prohibited lists of uses, which we think would be not compatible. That would be things like self-service laundry or dry cleaning. Any uses involving alcohol, on-premise dry cleaning, off-street parking lots or structures, large retail establishments, hospitals, and nursing homes. We have no objection to the proposed special limitations that are being offered by Mr. Debenham. Within a mile radius, there is only the B1B gas station to the north. There is no other B1B property in that 1 mile radius. With regard to when development would occur, of course, the rezoning would have to be approved. It would have to become effective through a replat, and then development would be consistent with the B1B uses that are allowed and conformity with those that are prohibited. There is not a great deal of commercially zoned property in the area. There is the 1 3.5 acre B3 parcel to the north. That would require a public hearing site plan review that looks at height, building footprint, landscaping, buffer, drainage, protection of the preservation of wetlands, and a traffic impact analysis. At the time that this was rezoned in 1991, the property, when it was approved, they went ahead and development was thought to be forthcoming within a year or two, and they were surcharged the property for the development. They constructed a required fence along the west side and the south side of the parcel, and it also required the various easements that we mentioned that are still on the property. Those have not been removed and are in play. We find that there is conformity with the current comp plan and the zoning standards of 2120-090, and we do support the B1B SL for the northern half of the current parcel, subject to the special limitations found on pages 14 and 15. And of course, there would be an effective clause that the B1B would not become effective until the property was replatted. Thank you.
Are there any questions from Ms. Artur from the Commission? Okay, thank you, Ms. Artur. Before we have petitioner's representative come forward, I want to explain the rules. First of all, persons who wish to testify will observe the following time limits. The petitioner, including all of the representatives, has 10 minutes, and part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. If you're a representative of a group, such as a community council or PTA, etc., you have 5 minutes, and individuals have 3 minutes. When the testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the Commission, and you may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the Commission. Individuals may have appeal rights relating to any action of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Planning and Zoning Commission's final decision. Additionally, any individual may request written findings from any commission decision within 7 days. So, I guess, Mr. Debenham, it's your turn. So please step forward, and how would you like to allocate your 10 minutes?
8.5 minutes to start, and then a minute and a half.
Minute and a half for rebuttal. Okay, very good. Okay, please state your name for the record.
Is this working here tonight?
I believe there's a button that you have to click somewhere.
There's an on-off button. Is that?
Right, I think that's what you may have to hit.
I pressed both of them. My nephew will figure it out. We'll be fine.
There we go.
Good evening, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am Sean Debenham. I am one of the owners of this property, of Debenham Properties. Just a quick recap of kind of who we are. Debenham Properties have been doing business here in Anchorage for since 1957 when my dad, Ray Debenham, moved here. We are very well known throughout the community and well respected. We pride ourselves on our integrity and good product. Debenham Properties specializes in kind of value-added real estate where we buy things that are a little bit depressed, and we fix them up and then usually release them, and we usually keep our product that we have. And we've been doing that for 40-plus years. We own a number of pieces throughout town. Debenham Properties believes in not only providing a good asset for themselves, but also something that enhances the community around it. And so we try to be aware of the community surroundings, and we feel like we've had a good relationship with the communities in which we have our assets. A quick history of the property that was mentioned briefly by Mayor afterwards. Debenham Properties purchased the lots from Calvary Church in April of 2007. And at that time, they purchased a contingent on the rezone of the northern lots of this lot that we currently own. And so what you see here is the lots as they used to stand. There was 3 lots there. There was a Lot 1B, Lot 1C, and a Lot 2. And the upper 2 lots, Lot 1B and 1C, were B1BSO. And the third lot, the Lot 2, was ROSO. And so when we purchased the lots, we planned on doing a residential development there, and so we needed all 3 lots to be the same zoning designation. So we came through here about a year and a half ago, and we had the upper 2 lots rezoned from B1BSO to ROSO with the intent of doing a residential development here. These are actually quite nice residential developments that we had here. Here's the big house concept, and then that went a little askew, so we went to what was called the Residences at Northwood, and it was a 96-unit condo development there that was completely new to the Anchorage market. Unfortunately, as you know, the market in 2008, when we were planning to construct this condo development, crashed, and the condo market wasn't feasible to get financing for us, investor financing and whatnot. So we were not able to go through with the condo development that we had at that time. Also during that time, in the fall of 2008, so here's a site plan of the residential development that we had. In the fall of 2008, Holiday gas station to our neighbors to the north informed us that they wanted to put a 25-foot wide by 230-foot long driveway across our development so they could have better access on the Northwood. Obviously, we didn't like that very much because it really affected our residential development. We do have a 44-foot building setback on the west side of this lot, and then if we also have the driveway on the east side of the lot, it would make our lot impossible to develop residential development on. Because of that, it resulted in litigation between Holiday and Debenham, and we're currently in litigation with Holiday about this driveway here. So currently, like I said, the rezone did go through, and the whole thing is ROSL right now. What we're proposing to do is to undo what was done a year and a half ago, and that's go back to the B1 BSL and take a mulligan, basically. And the rationale for that is it allows us to have a more manageable residential component. That's 2 acres on the south side. And we plan on going forward with that residential development next year. And it also allows us to move forward with a more commercial type use on the northern half. And it also allows us to have a possible solution to litigation that we might have with Holiday gas station. That driveway isn't quite as bad when you have a commercial use there. In fact, it's okay. Whereas with a residential development, it doesn't work at all. We believe that this creates a win-win between Holiday and Debenham and the Santa Fe Community Council. The Community Council gets kind of higher-end housing, and they also get some nice retail to service the area. Debenham obviously gets to develop their land, and Holiday might even get a little bit of better access. We have So you can see kind of where the lot lines would kind of go. We want half of it to be ROSL. We want the other half to be B1 BSL. There's a chance that Alaska Laser Wash might take the upper half of that commercial, that B1B commercial zoning. If that does happen, car wash is a conditional use, so they would have to come back through here with a site plan and get approval to actually do a car wash there. Site plan, the building configuration and whatnot. We have met with the planning department on 2 occasions. They did back us on this rezone. We're just trying to undo what was already done. We have talked to Santa Fe Community Council. I talked to Robert Hayes today, who's the president of Santa Fe Community Council. I explained to him what we're trying to do. We're trying to undo the rezone that we did a year and a half ago. And there's a chance a car wash might go there, but if a car wash does come, it'll come back through a conditional use. There was a little bit of concern by the Community Council about the car wash. But he understood that it would come back through a conditional use where public hearing would be had and everybody could comment on it. But he was willing to support it, and he was willing. He gave me his phone number and said if for some reason the board wanted to call him tonight, he wasn't able to show up tonight. But he said that if you want to take a recess and give him a call and just kind of verify with him, we have made efforts to reach out to Santa Fe Community Council. Just in conclusion, I'd just like to say that the rezone is basically to undo what was done a year and a half ago. The rezone does conform to the Anchorage 2020 Comprehensive Plan policies 1525 and 21. It does conform to the land use classification map that calls for neighborhood commercial in the area. We have talked to the planning board and Santa Fe Community Council. They're both on board, and we believe that it's a good solution for everyone involved. And we would just like all of you to please consider the rezone. Need all 5 of you, so please be nice. And that's it.
We may have some questions for you. Any questions from members of the commission? Okay, I guess no questions right now.
Commissioner
Wait a minute,
up there.
wait a minute. No, Mr. Weddleton, I don't normally sit here, so I'm not used to this thing telling me who wants to talk. Okay, Mr. Weddleton.
I can tell you preempted several of my questions. That was pretty good. Just going through our packet a little bit, there is a comment that the Holiday Station operates 24 hours, and my understanding is there would be time limits on some of the commercial operation here. Is that correct?
Currently, there is no proposal for on that. There's not.
Okay. I have a couple of questions for staff, but I used to live in the Sound Lake Community Council area, and I remember this has quite a bit of history here. I remember someone had bought it, and they just didn't want to develop commercial. It was like a hot-button piece of property. So I was really surprised to see the Holiday Station there. And then we do have a comment from a prior rezone in 2007 that Sound Lake Community Council said they supported the residential over commercial. And now we're 2 years later, and that's changed somewhat, that they're comfortable with this amount of commercial?
Yeah, when I was the one who went through with Sound Lake Community Council and met with them on 2 different occasions, explained to them what we were trying to do. They were supportive of the condo development that we were proposing. It was kind of a higher-end condo development. It was going to be a very nice development. We still plan on doing something like that on the southern 2 acres, and they supported that. And I think the support was more for the project that we had proposed as more opposed to that, hey, this is going to a residential use. It was actually it was an RO zoning. Where either residential or office could be used, but it was more supportive what our project was meant. And so when we back through, we said, look, we're just trying to undo what we were kind of trying to do.
So how many units, residential units, would be in that
On the southern
phase, roughly?
On 2 acres, roughly about 45 units.
On this driveway from Holiday, reading this packet, my impression was that was an existing plat or something. I mean, it had been on there for some length of time, or is that new?
The proposed Holiday driveway?
So the Holiday's there, but this driveway, was that new, that they can require you to do that? Or was it already on the plat and you hope to vacate?
Yeah, that's what the whole litigation is about. Obviously, Holiday believes that they had rights to do that, and we believe that they don't have rights to do that. It all centers around what was the 1999 agreement between 2 previous owners. An owner that was a guy by the name Mike Hagan that owned the corner lot, and I'm sorry, the 1999 agreement was between Tesoro, a gas station that owned it at the time, and I believe Mike Hagan that owned the southern lots. But anyways, the litigation is over that 1999 agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Yoshimura?
I guess I have a comment, and I don't know how to go about saying this, but I'm not in favor of this, and I recognize that there's a short board. I'm not in favor of it because I don't believe that this is the highest and best community use for this property.
Mr. Yoshimura, we're not ready to discuss that yet. We need to ask questions, and nothing's even, in front of us yet.
I know, but...
So can you direct your questions to Mr. Debenham, some specific things that would maybe assist other people in making decisions?
At this time, I'm just trying to be helpful.
Okay. We don't need to talk about that yet. We don't have anything in front of us.
Okay.
Mr. Morrison?
Just a couple of questions, and it does appear there's been a tremendous amount of history on this with a lot of denials and then final approvals and then now kind of going backwards and stuff. And so I'm a little bit confused on all the different directions it's gone. But if it goes back to the B1 rating, what does that do to the setbacks, and what does it do to the buffer zone in between that and the residential property to the west side?
we're proposing the same, like Mayor Torres said, we're proposing pretty much the same special limitations that were on there before. So currently there's a 44-foot building setback on the west side. So the closest that we can get to a residential lot line is 44 feet. And on top of that, there's also a fence that's an 8-foot high fence that's between the property and the residential. And so those still stay. The residential won't be able to see. They can't see right now anywhere over there on that land. It's secure, and all those setbacks stay.
And then you had mentioned the litigation that's going on. Didn't I understand the litigation had to do with that setback, or was it the driveway?
The litigation has to do with the ability to put a driveway across our lots. It doesn't have anything to do with these setbacks, like the 44-foot building setback or the fence or the landscape buffer or anything like that. It just has to do with being able to put a driveway across our land.
And then the potential commercial development that you're referring to, you said you had a possibility of the laser wash folks going in. The other one was described as a retail center.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have thoughts, or what are your plans in there? Do you have something that's solid that's going that direction?
As of right now, the way the development's looking is we would develop the residential first, and then possibly the Alaska Laser Wash might do a ground lease with us. So those two developments would go in, and then the retail center would be last, but that would be a couple of years from now. So we don't really have anything set, but I mean, it would be a nice retail center that would enhance the community around it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Weldon.
Actually, I had some for step, but well, you brought something up there. So you would do if this happens, you would expect to do the residential first, and then the strip mall, and then possibly the car wash?
Well, strip mall is a bad word for us. We would never do a strip mall. So we would do the residential and Alaska Laser Wash. If they decide to go with the lot, they would immediately come back through for a conditional use. So they would be back before this board in a few months. And then the retail center, and again, it's not a strip mall. And a strip mall is a long strip of continuous row after row of kind of retail. Retail development is way, way, way past that now. They do very, very nice things, and but that's a couple years off.
Okay, but I thought you said that the condo market had crashed, so that's why you're not doing the...
It has, and so what we're trying to do, a couple of things. Number one, we have a much smaller project, so we just have 2 acres, and the second thing is we're trying to decide between either condos or higher-end apartments for the area.
Okay. All right, good, thanks. Can I ask a couple of staff, or you want to...
Well, Ms. Artur is in the queue, so I'll go ahead and...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Debenham, could you discuss again the issue over the legal dispute of how a driveway across the face of the property would affect development of the property if it were stayed ROSL. Part of the discussion that we've heard here now has to do, Mr. Morrison brought up the issue of the landscaping and the setbacks. Those are requirements of the plat, 2008-92. Those, regardless of what the zoning is, those setbacks and the landscape requirements have to be satisfied in any case. But I think that the question is part of what your reason for coming forward had to do with what's developable as ROSL versus B1B.
That's right. If this isn't set in stone, but if how they were to be successful in their endeavors, I don't know if I can get this back on, it's on down here. Is there?
No, not timing. His machine. There we go.
If they were successful, the driver would come south across our property and then jet out to Northwood. And basically that allows them to have a full access to Northwood where they can turn right out, right in, left out. That's a full access point for them. And that's what they're after. And so if that driver were to go in, it would render our top 2 acres pretty much undevelopable. Because of the 44-foot setback that's on the west side, and now that's a 40-foot setback for that drive on the east side, it makes our land pretty much undevelopable. So that is a reason one of the reasons for this rezone is for that, but also we believe that it makes our lot more developable as well, because we can go ahead and go forward with the residential on the south, and we can provide commercial on the north. This is, like I said, it does conform to Anchorage 2020 plan. It is conformed to the land use plan map for that area. It is a conforming use for those things.
Any other questions for Mr. Debenham? I have one for you, sir. In regards to the prohibited uses and structures on page 14, A through K, do you have any objection to any of those? Because there was more on this list than what you wanted. Are these okay?
We're okay with those.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Any other questions for? Okay, fine, sir. We kind of goofed up on the timing, so in effect, it looks like you've got about 6 minutes and 15 seconds for rebuttal.
Okay.
We didn't push the button until you were partway through your presentation. So
Okay.
that's just life.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else that wishes to testify? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
My name is Brian Dork. I am the property owner directly west of where this rezoning is going to be taking place. I don't know, I'm kind of new to this, so I might be maybe putting the cart before the horse or whatever, and maybe my comments are more directed towards Mr. Debenham, I don't know. Some of the things, and I'm new to the area there, I got there after the holiday came in, and the first question I guess I would have had or comment is understanding from the holiday, they tried to get a car wash as part of their business there, and it did not go through. I don't know if that's because if he's asking for the same zoning that holiday is, or why would the car wash not have been approved for the holiday if, in fact, that was part of it, versus, right now that maybe wanting to come in with a laser car wash. I guess, that, like I said, some of these might be questions to him. These are, I guess, more comments than anything. There is an 8-foot fence there, but you can still see right over the 8-foot fence. It doesn't do anything unless you're standing right at the 8-foot fence. There is a line of about 20-foot tall spruce trees that goes around. That is a very nice barrier, with the exception of when Holiday went in, they obviously tied into the sewer to the west of them, which means the trees come down, and now you've got these nice blank spots in there. I would hope that if development does come through, something could be done to maybe address that. If this case with the driveway, how can this go ahead and be rezoned? Obviously, nothing can be built until that is resolved, I would think. So is this something, why would the rezoning, I guess, question come into play now if we don't even know, like he said, if Holiday ends up winning this, it kind of renders everything moot, I guess, because there's, like you said, that kind of renders that, not being able to do what he wants to do or what he wants to put in there. I don't think I'm not advised or against any development. I know it's coming and stuff. I would just like to think maybe the people in the area would be a little bit more involved, that you could try to maybe get hold of somebody. I'd be glad to sit down and talk to find out. The retail space bothers me also. All we have is retail space. We don't call them strip malls anymore, but call them what they are. The name's changed, but it's pretty much the same thing. And, you're affecting all the residents on the west side of that street somewhat. I guess that's all I just wanted to say, is get some comments on record.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dorff. Is there any questions from the members of the commission? Ms. Yoshimura.
Sir, can you tell me, do you live on Sindhu Circle or Timothy?
No, I'm right off of Timothy. I am the lot directly where the car wash would go, directly. I'm right behind that Holiday is where the car wash possibly is going. I am the property owner directly west of that.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Yoshimura?
Not at this time.
Okay, Mr. Morrison?
The practicality of having... Oops, I'm sorry. You got to train me how to turn this thing on. But having the commercial property next to your property and with the buffer zones, can you tell me what your thoughts or maybe other comments that you've gotten from neighbors in that area? What are your feelings on having some development that...
Well, again, I can compare it to what, say, like the Holiday is. If the structure, wasn't over the 20-foot tree line, it would be fantastic. Obviously, people are there. We got the great view of the mountains and would like that not to be disturbed. But, nobody I don't think that I've talked to is anti-development. Just more of a question of what's coming in and how is that going to affect, I say our way of life, what the difference now. I woke up 6 o'clock in the morning from the Holiday with the trucks coming in and the trash being emptied. It could be worse, but it's not directly behind me. It's more directly behind the vacant lot right now. But I still do get it. Like I say, the biggest thing is when they take out some of those tall spruce trees that would be a great natural buffer to tie into the sewer, the way I understand it from Holiday is what they had to do. Well, now you got this big blank space, and they say there's nothing they can do there. So I wake up, and I guess one good thing I can tell the price of gas is going up or down from my window. But that would be my biggest concern is at this time, these are all proposed things coming in there. If the rezoning comes, that doesn't mean that's what's going to go in there. Does there then become another time that we will be addressing what might come in, like you said, if the laser car wash is coming in, that would come before the board again? Like I said, I'm just a man who's never done this before, and, maybe I'm, asking the wrong questions or saying the wrong things. I don't know.
Well, we appreciate you being here. It takes a lot of time to come down and testify.
It's in my backyard.
There's a couple of things in here that I see is it does restrict the height to 35 feet. So, and I would think if they were putting in condos, the condos probably might have been even a little bit higher.
Absolutely. And that's why I said I'm not adverse to development.
Yeah.
Obviously, it would be, I would like to say, I have at least a little bit more control over what goes in there versus if something's going in there. We know that there's not a lot of land left, and it's going to happen sooner or later. Absolutely. I concede that point 100%. If the structure that goes in there was not above what the Holiday is, that fits well.
But your pleasure would be to make sure that there's some kind of trees or something.
When the trees come down, then that leaves just these big void areas that you look right at that structure. And like I said, the Holiday is not behind my property, so I get the noise somewhat. With a laser car wash, I understand it's probably a 24-hour operation, but it's, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sure not too many people are washing their cars. And the height of it, if it stayed within the Holiday Inn, I don't think I would have too much of a question for that, other than the trees that come out, what can be done, or will they be amenable to doing something instead of me looking, and anybody else there looking through at a vacant hole and seeing all these buildings and stuff.
Yeah. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Any further questions for Mr. Dorff? Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
My name is Mike Redden. I've lived I was conceived in the neighborhood, and I was there before Minnesota bypass was ever even thought about. At any rate, main thing I was wondering about is how they got, when the gas station went to Texaco, and I've been to about 15 of these meetings on this thing over the past decades, whatever it is. And to Texaco, I think it was, they couldn't get the late hours on it, and so they abandoned doing it. I was wondering when did the other gas station get the late hours to start with? And I didn't think that was going to be in it until right at the very end when I went and talked to them people about it. Was one of my questions.
We're not in a position to answer that question. That was if it was approved by the previous commission, and it was approved.
Yeah, when they first were billed, I thought they told me it didn't have the late hours. But anyhow, and that's one of the major things is the hours of the thing, I guess.
Okay, well, we're not testifying this evening on something that isn't before us. So, if in fact somebody wants to put something in and it's a conditional use, then that will be a wholly separate, different case that you have an opportunity to testify on, and the neighborhood would have an opportunity to testify on.
Okay, that's my comment on those hours.
Okay, sir, let me see if there's any questions from members of the commission. No, guess not. Thank you, sir. Any further testimony? Okay, Mr. Debenham, you've got about 4 minutes or so, or 6 minutes or something like that for rebuttal.
I won't take that long. I'd just like to say that we have worked very hard to reach out to the Senate Community Council. I have met with them many times, not more than one time, both in previous zoning. I know Robert Hayes and Sherry Jackson, she's helped me out tremendously. She knows who I am. We have support of the Senate Community Council. We've worked with the planning department, coming up with special limitations that make this palatable. We're proposing special limitations. Actually, we're proposing with the planning departments. We have more special limitations here than were there previously. We've done everything that we possibly can to work with all parties involved to make sure that it's a win-win situation for everybody. On top of that, it conforms to the land use map that's there. It conforms to the 2020 plan. It helps us out in our development. It helps. We feel it's a good situation for everybody, and so. I understand that you have some reservations, but we have tried our absolute best to try to work with everybody, with every party that's involved, short of going around and obviously knocking on every single door. But we have worked with Sand Lake Community Council. So.
Okay, Mr. Frederick, I see you have a question.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Debenham, 2 questions. One on height. The old B1B in 91 had a 25-foot height limitation. Would you be comfortable with 25-foot height limitation since we're going back to B1B?
If that's the deciding factor, we can live with 25 feet. That's a two-story. It's a two-story building. 35 feet allows you to go to 3 stories. I really doubt that we would ever, obviously Alaska Laser Wash isn't 3 stories or 1 story. And the retail, it probably wouldn't be more than 2 stories. So that's probably fine.
Okay. And then hours of operation, I'd note also back in the old 91 ordinance that there was a limitation on hours of operation ceasing between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m.
And we'd like to address that when we come back through with the conditional use for Alaska Laser Wash. It would have been residential. There would have been 96 units of residential, and obviously residential has all hours of the night of use.
Right.
And granted, a retail or even Alaska Laser Wash would have, if it was open all night, it would have some use, but it would probably be less intensive than residential. But anyways, that's something that that proposed maybe we discuss in a month or two, and we'll come back through for conditional use.
Okay, thanks for your input.
Ms. Yoshimura?
Mr. Debenham, I guess I do have a question or two about this driveway litigation. So would that, obviously the driveway does not exist now, is that correct?
No, it does not. There's a shared driveway between the two of us.
Okay.
But the driveway that actually comes south is not built yet, no.
Okay. Would the gas station have to compensate you for the driveway for the land value of the driveway?
They would not, no.
No, if they won the litigation, they would not
No.
have to compensate you for that. Where are you in that? I understand that lawsuits take a long time and all that sort of thing, but
We were supposed to go to trial at the end of November. That was postponed because there's a possibility that more parties might be named. It's kind of a Pandora's box right now. The more we get into it, there's a lot of other previous owners besides Holiday and us, and so other owners, previous owners, are getting pulled in. And so we'd like to not do that.
And can I assume that no development would occur, even if this rezone were approved, until that litigation was resolved? Is that correct?
That's correct. The litigation would have to be resolved because we wouldn't be able to get financing for it if there was litigation on the property. So, yeah, it would have to be resolved. But this would offer an avenue for a resolution because if it did get rezoned to be commercial, that driveway across our land it would be okay because that's where the driveway would probably be anyways for a commercial development. Whereas for the residential development, that's not where the driveway was going to be. The driveway was going to be on the west side. It was going to be. We wanted the residential units to be near the street so they could enjoy the views and whatnot. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, I'm sorry. I found what I was looking for.
Okay. Mr. Frederick.
Thanks. I'm sorry. I had one more question. There was some reference to trees as a buffer between your property and the adjacent residential area to the west. If I remember right, on the area that we're talking about rezoning, there are no trees, are there not?
Currently, there are some really nice trees. There's some 20-foot evergreen trees that line our property between us and the residential.
Oh, okay. So it is on your property.
Yeah, it is. And then there's there's an 8-foot fence between the trees and the residential right now.
Okay. All right. I've driven by that so much, I guess I wasn't paying attention. But so there are trees there, but they're in the building setback.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes.
So
a building can't be put on them.
Right.
They're within the easements for water, sewer, electrical, and telephone.
Would you leave those trees there, even if we didn't?
We would try to, because they literally are very, very nice trees, and they're 20-foot trees that were planted back in '91, and we would like to keep them there, because they're really nice. The problem comes when we go to develop it and we have to figure out where the utilities are going to go in. And so there's a possibility, until we get into it, I just don't know.
I understand that. I guess I would make a strong recommendation that you save what trees are savable.
And there is a requirement for landscaping buffer around that west side. That's already in the plat notes now.
Yeah, but you're not going to be planting 20-foot trees either. So.
Right.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Any further questions for Mr. Debenham? Okay. Thank you. The public hearing is closed. Decision rests with the board. I'll accept a positive motion. Mr. Weddleton moved.
In the case of 2009-131, rezoned north 2 acres of Lot 2A, Raspberry Center subdivision, consisting of 4.29 acres, from ROSL to B1B with new special limitations, I'd move for approval.
Okay, it's been seconded by Mr. Frederick. Mr. Weddleton, would you like to speak to your motion?
Actually, I had some questions for staff before I did that. Fair enough?
Go ahead.
A couple of things on this. Reading this packet, we saw just a few years ago that the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I think there is support also from Assembly resolutions, that residential was a really good use for this area. And now we also read here that commercial is a really good use for this area. And what it looks like to me is we got zoning where anything goes. They seem very, very different. And even though the land use map says neighborhood commercial, it did when there was great support for this residential. So where do we go with this? Two very different things are both really, really swell.
Through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, when the commission looked at it last, they did not restrict the uses to only residential. The uses allow a lot of, or basically anything in the RO. It allows commercial, it allowed churches, and so the discussion focused on residential, but the commission did not require it to be residential. When it went to the assembly, my understanding is that the use of the property was appropriate as whatever was allowed under the RO. And yes, there was focus or discussion about the residential, but the requirements for a site plan review, I believe, were dropped, and the specific uses and density were dropped. So it's hard to look at that for guidance to say that the highest and best use was only residential. Under the B1B, if I could answer one of your earlier questions, is that originally in 1991, the Assembly put a lot of restrictions on the type of uses and the hours of operation. But that was eliminated. Now, if you remember, there was a lot of discussion about the different platted configurations of this land. And Lot 1A, which is the corner lot, was platted out, I believe it was, in 2006. In 2006 as well, that property was the subject of its own rezone of modifying the B1SL limitations. And so, again, it was a function of the fact that it didn't preclude the construction of the gas station in 2006. And so it was a permitted use, and that's how Holiday is there today. And again, the hours were dropped. I don't know the reason for that, but that's the result.
Another question then.
Go ahead.
There was actually quite a bit of discussion in this packet regarding the laser wash, and we got pictures and so on. But that's really a completely separate issue then, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
And though it's written up in here, there's no, were this rezone to go through, it doesn't imply that we would ever support a car wash there. Maybe we would, maybe not.
It doesn't imply that anyone would support the laser wash, nor does it imply that one would be proposed to be developed. My understanding is, yeah, they think they would like to do that, and Laser Wash is interested in that location. But it may not happen. And until it comes forward as a conditional use, we don't know that it'll ever happen. So in the meantime, then the B1B uses that would be allowed, if Mr. Debenham had a better offer or had another idea under the B1B, it would be allowed as to the uses under the B1B, except for those that are being prohibited.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Yoshimura?
I am, as I stated before, I am not going to be supportive of Mr. Weddleton's motion for a variety of reasons. Although I respect Debenham Properties for the work that they've done in the community, and I have a great deal of empathy for his title issue relating to the driveway, I have to look at this in a little broader perspective, and I guess what I would call this is sort of a commercial creeping through a series of rezones that have taken place over many, many years that ultimately results in the lack of an opportunity, not necessarily the necessity as far as the rezone requires or the RO zone, but the opportunity for the development of residential property in this area, which I think has the community as a whole has a far greater need for than more commercial retail establishments that I feel we have a plethora of. Having said all that, I'm wondering that I'd feel uncomfortable that my vote alone is going to result in a denial, and I'm wondering if there is a procedure available that would allow perhaps a continuance so that more commissioners could have an input regarding this rezone.
Staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we could postpone the decision, continue it to another time. That would be possible. We'd have to make sure that the other commissioners, in fact, got access to the public testimony and listened to it and said, yes, they were ready to make decisions, but that is a possibility. Right now we do have a motion on the floor, though. Mr. Weddleton.
Well, I have some comments, but perhaps what Commissioner Yoshimura could do would make a motion to postpone, and that would be taken up right now. Is that correct?
Would that be appropriate at this time?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Yoshimura.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to postpone this case until the next available calendar date.
Okay, it's been seconded by Mr. Morrison. Can I speak to your motion?
I think that in order to do full service to Mr. Debenheyer's request as the petitioner, that it would be appropriate for a full board or closer to a full board to be able to participate in this decision.
Any other comments from other commissioners? Mr. Morrison?
I would agree that I think we should. Oh, I'm sorry. Keep forgetting to turn my microphone on. I think we should postpone only because if one vote out of this group stops this from going forward, I think that'd be very unfortunate. I think personally I would support the original motion and support the Debenham project because I think it's a good balance in where they're going. And I think it would be unfortunate if we made a vote right now on our limited number of votes here that would stop that from going forward.
Any further discussion, Mr. Weddleton?
I actually appreciate the thought. I would not support it, and if only because it does set a precedent, and we did give the petitioner an opportunity to postpone on his own, knowing that we had a short board, and I wouldn't want to think that we would set a precedent where we'd always back down, instead of moving forward. So, but I do agree with your sentiments otherwise.
Okay, any other further comments from the board? Okay, just on this particular motion, I tend to agree with Mr. Weddleton that the petitioner had an opportunity to ask for it to be heard at another time, and that he took the chance, and I don't, we gave the opportunity. It was no penalty. there's no cost to him for extending it. So I would oppose basically hearing it at another time. So obviously we have disagreement on this, so we'll use our machines. Yes vote postpones the decision until further date. No vote basically forces us to do things tonight. Three yeses and 2 noes. Okay, that fails. So we're back to the main motion.
Do I have to hit something to speak?
Are there any further amendments to the main motion, which is for approval?
I would like to propose a friendly amendment that special limitation number 4 should be changed to 25 feet from 35 feet as the maximum height.
Which page is that on?
15.
15.
I accept that.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Frederick, you were the seconder on that, right? Okay, so obviously you agree to it also.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, special limitation 4 on page 15 is now 25 feet? Okay. Mr. Weddleton.
I'd like to add to the special limitation also a time limit for commercial operations that they not operate regular hours between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. And that basically parallels the 1991 zoning special limitations.
Okay. Mr. Frederick, you're the seconder in that. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't think I do.
Okay.
Withdraw it.
All right. Mr. Weldon?
Okay, just giving us time to speak to this motion. I share the concern that the way I say we're losing 96 units potentially of commercial condos here that I actually think that the Satellite Community Council would probably prefer and would have more community support. What compels me to support this motion is that the land use plan map does label it as neighborhood commercial center, which, would, include, a commercial center here. So I feel that I am compelled to support it based on that.
Any further comments? Mr. Morrison.
As I spoke earlier, I'm going to support this motion for a couple of reasons. And one, knowing the area and what's there, I think is a good compromise. But secondly, I also know what it's like to have a piece of property and have things change around you and then having to adapt. And I think this is a good plan to try to change and try to adapt with the best solution for what's available there. So I'll be voting in support of this motion.
Okay, Mr. Frederick.
I'll be supporting the motion as well. I think that the return to the business district for part of this and part of it being, or the remaining part being residential, which we're not considering. I think this is an interesting kind of a transition area between residential area to the west and the commercial industrial strip along Minnesota Drive. It is some distance from there to another small commercial area. It's a mile or more, I think, up to Four Corners, or most of a mile anyway. And So I think it's an area that both can handle and may perhaps should have some convenience, commercial development, as well as residential. And I'll be supporting it for that reason. I would like a finding that there are natural trees on the west border of the subject property, and I would recommend in the strongest terms that those be preserved as a buffer between the commercially zoned property and the residential area, if at all possible, considering the fact that there is a utility easement in there, and they may not all make it, but there should be an effort put forward to preserve as many as possible.
Any further comments from members of the board? I'd just like to emphasize that it does support policies 1, 5, and 25 of the 2020 plan. Since there is objection, we will use our machines. A yes vote approves the rezoning. A no vote disapproves it. Okay, please use your machines. That motion fails. We're going to take about a 5-minute break here, and then we'll go into the bicycle plan. Back to order, November 2nd, 2009 Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll now move to unfinished business, case 2009-120, Comprehensive Plan Anchorage Bicycle Plan. And the public hearing has been closed on this, so we're basically in our deliberation right now. Before we move into that, I think staff has something that they passed out to us, so I'd like staff to explain what the bunch of numbers mean.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say first, if I might, that Anchorage recently won or got a designation from the League of American Cyclists, and that is the honor of a bronze recognition as a bicycle-friendly city. So, and part of the reason is because we're putting this plan together, and we have a lot of people supporting bicycling. So, with that little plug, I'll just move on. What we did from the last meeting is we went through and there were a number of issues that were brought up. Number one was basically, why are we doing this plan and who does it relate to? And we tried to answer that. Number two, Commissioner Pease brought up that we'd missed a few items from our first public hearing or public meeting that we had. So that's what all of these issue responses are, as well as a few that were brought up in public testimony. The sheet of paper we handed out this evening is actually all of the items that staff did not make changes to the plan with. So we did not concur on these items, and there's 30-some items. So issue number 15, for example, would be on your page 9, and we said no change to plan is recommended. The other thing that we did is the items, the issues that we did change, we attached on the back the actual pages from the plan, and the grayed-in lettering are the changed words, just to make sure that this time we caught it all. So with that, I'll leave it up to you on how you would like to proceed through this. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here now. Does your item 15 correspond to item 15 on page 7 of the memorandum dated September 14th?
Mr. Chairman, no, it does not.
What does it refer to then?
We're now referring to the latest attachment E1, which came out with your last packet.
November 2nd thing, okay.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
November 2nd from Mr. Robinson, and then I have an October 12th memo attached, so that would be...
Okay, so our base document then is E1 November 2nd, 2009.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music. So item 15 is on page 9 of that. Okay. Typically, what we've done on something like this is we go into a committee of the whole so we can just chat freely without having to make motions, and then on those things that we can't get consensus on, we set those aside and deal with those as individual motions after we've discussed everything that we possibly can discuss and agree upon in the committee of the whole. Okay, thank you, Mr. Frederick, and second by Mr. Weddleton. Any objection? We're in the committee of the whole. Okay. Mr. Weddleton, you want to lead this thing? Since you got your bicycle helmet out front there, and we know you rode over here in 15-degree weather tonight. And
Downhill.
Downhill, okay.
I would. So would you like to just go through the issues, looking at, so it's the dated November 2nd issue response. And we'll start, page 3 is issue 1. And so we're looking for anyone to pull that. Any objection to number 1?
Through the chair, John, do we really want to go through each one that's already been made changes to, since the city has agreed that there were changes to be made, or do we only want to look at the things that the city said they didn't want to make changes to? Do we want to...
But the thing is, see, we may still disagree with something like 1 as an example, but we probably ought to go through that stuff real quickly.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
Unfortunately, we've got lots of them.
It takes a while. We can be, but there are a couple that would not be on their list that I would like to pull.
Yeah, we have 96 of these things that we need to go through.
So we have agreement on number 1. Okay, number 2 on page 5. Any objections? Number 3. Number 4. Number 5 on page 6. Number 6. Number 7. Number 8. Number 9. Number 10, page 7. Number 11. Number 12. Number 13 on page 9. Number 14. And I'd like to pull number 15.
Okay, do we want to, you just want to pull it and we'll discuss it later?
I would do that.
Okay, very good.
Number 16, any objections? Number 17.
Okay, now staff disagrees with us on that one.
I'd like to pull that one. Number 18. Number 19. I'd like to pull that. Number 20. Number 21. 20. Whoop.
Staff disagrees on 20.
So is that being pulled?
Do you want to pull it?
21?
20.
Oh, 20. I do not want to pull that. So number 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, I would like to pull. Any objection to 26? On page 13, number 27, number 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33. On page 14, 34, 35, 36, 37, and 38. On page 15, 39, 40. Excuse me, and I would like to pull 42.
What about 41?
I'm sorry, did I miss 41? 41? I would not pull 41 myself. Okay, 42 I would pull. And 43.
43?
Yes.
Okay.
And any objections to 44? Okay, moving to page 16, 45. 46, I would like to pull. 47, 48. On page 17, 49, 50, 51, and 52. Page 18, 53, 54. Page 19, 55, 56. And I would like to pull 57. No, actually, no, I have no objection to 57. Are there any objections to 57? Page 20, 58, 59, 60, 61. Page 21, 62. And 63, I would like to pull. 64. 65, and I would like to pull 66. Page 22, 67. On 68, I would like to pull number 68. And also I pull issue 69. On page 23, issue 70, issue 71, 72, and 73. Page 24, 74, 75, 76. And I would like to pull 77. Page 25, issue 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, and 83. Page 26, 84, 85, 86. Page 27, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, and 92. Page 28, 93. And issue 94, I would like to pull, as well as 95 and 96.
You want to pull 96?
Yes, the last three.
Okay, I think the first thing we better do is just go back and verify the pulled ones. And then we're going to have to discuss how staff is going to treat those items that we didn't pull, because that means that we're overriding staff's recommendation. And there's nothing wrong with that, because their recommendation on the list they gave us, starting with 15 and ending with 96, is that they're not going to make changes based on the recommendations that are in there.
My understanding, if I did not pull it, I accepted staff's recommendation. So if their recommendation was not to change the plan, I accepted their recommendation.
That's how you're, okay.
Right, so I only pulled issues where I disagreed with what was stated,
So
whether they recommended it or not.
Even if staff said, we're not going to make any changes, you agreed with that if we didn't pull it?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make, as long as everybody understands that's what we're agreeing to, that's fine. Okay. So let's go take a look at the pulls and just make sure. Let me read my list, and then you tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, pull 15.
Correct.
17.
Correct.
19.
Correct.
25.
Correct.
42, 43.
Correct.
46.
Correct.
$63.
Did you have 51? Oh, God. No, I'm sorry, 51's okay, never mind.
So 63, 66, 68, 69, 77.
Correct.
$94, $95, $96.
Correct.
Okay. Good. You want to go ahead and go out of the committee of the whole, or do we want to go ahead and discuss these ones you've asked to be pulled, and then see if we can get those into the big group? Which is, what do you think is easiest?
I suppose I get out of the committee of the whole, approve what we haven't pulled, and then go through these. And
You've got about 10 or 12 of them that are...
Some will be very quick, and we'll...
Yeah.
If it's not going anywhere, I could withdraw it.
Yeah, okay, so let's, motion to go out of committee of the whole.
So moved.
Okay, and seconded by Connie. Okay, thank you. All right, we're now back in, there's any objections? No, none. All right. So we're now back in our normal organization. We need a positive motion to approve all of those items that were not pulled. Moved by Mr. Frederick, seconded by Mr. Weddleton. And the understanding on this is that if, in fact, the staff indicated that they did not make changes, then we accept the fact that the staff did not make the change. Is there any objection to approving those items that were not pulled. No objection. That passes unanimously. Now let's go back and deal with the eaches.
Well, you want to go back to the committee of the whole then and deal with those, or do it as a...
If you'd like to.
No? It might be easier, because some of these are discussion, little information, and then maybe I'll just let it go.
Okay, and then we'll go out of the committee of the whole once we go through all of these things.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. Is there a motion to go out of the committee, back into the committee of the whole? Thank you, Mr. Frederick. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Any objection? We're now in the committee of the whole. Okay, let's start with item 15.
Actually, I have quite a few questions for staff as I go through these. And this one is really just a clarification on why the Ship Creek Trail would not be part of the core network.
Do I say through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, since you're in committee, or anyway?
I'm not finicky.
When we looked at establishing the core route, which is actually on page 40, we really tried to get the main direct routes to places. And the Ship Creek Trail is just a little off the grid that we wanted to direct people more on the roadways. And so that's why we did not include the Ship Creek Trail. Kind of veers off rather than being on the main route.
Okay, so it's failure to make key connections, and then also because it's not on the road?
No, that didn't have anything to do with it. It's just not a main connection. It's a little out of the way.
Okay, well, I accept that. Then I'm going to make further changes on 15.
Okay, item 17.
On this issue, and this is to make Old Seward Highway between Potter Creek and Rabbit Creek Road part of the core network. And while I agree with staff that this is an area of very low density, it's actually a very highly traveled corridor for bicyclists, and it's not so much traveling for residents, pure utility cycling, but a lot of people train on that route. And you have people riding back and forth up and down that, or doing the loop, which is Old Seward Highway, New Seward Highway, and coming around the overpass and coming back around. So, to some extent, is connecting two locations. In a pure sense, it might not do that, but it is the location, going there to ride. And because of that, I would support making it a core route. And then a little bit, this is further down the line, but we just had the Hillside District Plan, and if you add some 10,000 people just up the hill in the rough general time frame of this plan, that could be the main route. People coming down Potter or coming down Potential Road from Golden View through Legacy Heights would all drop them right down at the southern end of this road. So I would like to see this, and it seems to make sense to me that this would be part of a core network that would be very much in the future for connecting neighborhoods. But in any other regard, it's important.
Well, Commissioner Weddleton, I know we were kind of torn on this one because it's really close to adding it, and then you look at it, the whole sort of north, south, east, west, and it almost seemed like we were then missing the next one across. So where did we stop? So I don't have any problem with adding it.
Okay, so
Staff would concur with your request.
So what do we write here? That road will be made a part of the core network.
And be added to core network.
Okay.
Item 19.
This is actually, I'm a little bit confused here. Okay, we've got Muldoon Road And it says here, due to the many public comments regarding the lack of planned bicycle facilities along Muldoon, we revised the public hearing draft. A project was added for reconnaissance study, and I didn't see where that was discussed, or that it was given one of the special study area letters. And if anyone's following, on page 39, the map shows special study areas.
It's actually Area D on sheet 41. It's right up there. We had so many people saying that we didn't do anything with Muldoon Road, and this was one of those comments that I guess we didn't clarify it well enough. That's why we put in the special study area, but then we also tried to make an off Muldoon Road route, which is those roads to the right, and many of you may not know Grand Larry and a couple of other roads, but we tried to do two things. So we could deal with Muldoon as a special study, and as well try and create this bicycle boulevard pathway that would be off the main road.
What are you referring to? I don't have a page 41.
It's a big map.
Which map is it?
It's the proposed bicycle network, figure 11.
Figure 11?
It's a fold-out.
Okay. Oh, so maybe is that counted as 2 pages or something? Okay, at any rate, I'm looking at that. So, it's D on this.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just wanted to check that was accurate, so thanks. Okay, so 19 is fine.
Okay, so you accept that. Okay. Okay. 25.
Now, this regards the Alaska Railroad, which of course they had complaints, and you've stood fast that at some time in the future it's nice to have in there, which is fine. Commissioner Pease had some comments that a way to look at this is that whereas the whole thing may not happen anytime soon, that little pieces could be. Have you incorporated any encouragement for developing it piece by piece, or is that necessary?
Commissioner Weddleton, that's how we usually build pathways in Anchorage, is we build pieces. The fact that we just have it listed as one giant project doesn't mean we would wait to have funding for a whole project. We certainly would build it in pieces if we could. So I'm not sure that one really is germane to item 25. Maybe, but we would certainly consider building segments as we had funding available.
Okay, she had a comment specific on that I never saw her comment pulled out and addressed specifically. So I was...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I guess I thought that was understood, that we usually build
okay.
things that way. Apologize.
Okay, so 25, I'd accept the staff's position. On issue 42, on page 15, I would like to recommend just a change in wording. And the recommendation, which you can read, so I'll read what I'd like to see. I'll read it. This is, let's say, 42. Staff recommends it should be noted that all trails in Far North Bicentennial Park must be gravel in order to be consistent with the park master plan. And I don't think that's actually correct, because the park plan and the new trails plan actually support quite a bit of plain old skinny muddy dirt trails. So I recommend the wording. It should be noted that all trails in Far North Bicentennial Park should not be paved, comma, in order to be consistent. Maybe you don't need the comma. In order to be consistent with the park master plan.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. We accept that.
Okay, and 46, so as not to dominate, Commissioner Yoshimura also wanted
Well,
this
43.
Oh, we did 43?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. 43 is similar. It's just a rewording. I would call it Far North Bicentennial Park, just for clarity. And I would delete the part that says crosses the creek which. Because I don't know that that's actually critical. I know we talk about bears following Camel Creek and staying away from there, but there are actually bears throughout the park, and that should recognize that. So it would read, the Far North Bicentennial Park route can be frequented by bears during the spring, summer, and fall. And the second sentence would be the same.
We accept that, thank you.
And 46, Commissioner Yoshimura.
Can you turn your thing?
I have a couple of comments that I want to make, and maybe staff can help me clarify what my issues are. The bicycle plan includes a policy that will require all new collectors and above serving these previously undeveloped areas to include a bicycle facility. By facility, do you mean a bike path or trail on the shoulder or detached?
Yes, we do.
All right. So I guess my question is, who's going to put these bike paths in, and who's going to pay for the maintenance of them? Because I think one of the things that we always have to address when we're doing these plans is, who's going to pay for them and who's going to maintain them. Because if they are built by the private developer and then they're given to the homeowners association for maintenance, then that homeowners association is not going to want to have these facilities, quote unquote, be public because of the liability issues associated with them. So I think there needs to be some clarification. If a developer is required to build these bike facilities, is the municipality going to accept them for maintenance? Or whose responsibility is it?
It's my understanding we're talking about primary roads here, which are collectors, and those are governed by the design criteria manual for the municipality. So that usually states pathways along the side of the road, and I'm not sure how that might tie in with maintenance. Can someone help me here?
Mr. Yoshimura, I'm not sure that the example would be one that we would see where a collector would be a private collector within a homeowners association. I think by definition, a collector is going to be a more public facility.
But I'm talking about the bicycle facility, not the collector road itself. So are you saying that the bicycle facility is always going to be connected to the road, to the collector?
The bicycle facility would be in the right-of-way, which would be publicly owned.
Attached or detached?
I'm not. It depends which road it was on and how it was labeled. You'll note also that we didn't want to change the plan to go with this comment. This was a comment that was made, and we did not concur with making any changes. So I don't know if that helps or not.
The concern that I always have is that these plans are then used as guidelines for private developers, and therefore it's very hard to define or change them once one is in negotiations with the city. over design. So it seems to me that I don't know what the solution is, but I think we should be careful when we're talking about undeveloped areas to include a bicycle facility, that we are more definitive. And I guess it's probably too late to do anything about it at this particular point in time. But I'm sure it will be an issue in the future. Mr. Weddleton.
Well, maybe I could recommend something. Is this
Okay.
the comment here, which I believe came from Commissioner Pease, but it recommends that it says create a new design study area. It says west of Golden View, but I believe she means east of Golden View, uphill.
Mm-hmm.
To consider shared roadways or paved shoulder bikeways as road alignments and designs and traffic volumes become known. And I would support a phrase in the plan, I guess in the section where the special study areas are mentioned, that would discuss this, or create this design study area. And it also wouldn't, I don't know if it's stated there, but in the response here it says routes connecting to Chugach State Park are considered recreational and will be addressed in the area-wide Trails Plan update. And when we passed the Hillside District Plan, there was a section that I really liked, and I said, I'm going to be using this someday, and here I am. And this is a little discussion that was in the issue response for that really pointed out that we shouldn't make distinctions on roads or trails based on recreational or utility or functional. That it really depends on who's doing what, when, and where. I recreate on the trails that I rode down here today, but I also got to work today on those trails, those same trails. And so it is, I don't, I'm always cautious about anything that suggests a reasoning that because it goes to Chugach State Park, it's a recreational trail. I was skiing at Glen Alps on Sunday, and there were 5 bicycles there that some high school skiers had locked up, put their skis out of their pack, put their skis on, and they went off skiing. Were they recreating when they rode up Toilsome Road, or was that commuting? I don't know what they were doing. So they were smiling, though. So, at any rate, so at the end, I would like to see some mention that, acknowledgement that we will have a significant road network at some point east of Golden View Road, and at least some recognition that the standards here should be looked at.
My question to staff is, in their answer, they indicate that the bicycle plan includes a policy that will require all new collectors and above serving those previously undeveloped areas to include a bicycle facility. So does, in fact, this policy, which I don't know which policy it is, does that satisfy our requirements in a very general way rather than specifically saying it's going to be east or west of Golden View? I mean, it could be east or west of Eagle River or wherever, So maybe we need to be more generalized when we talk about undeveloped areas rather than specifying them as near Golden View.
Can you tell me where that policy is stated? Okay.
If I might try to address the question. My name is John Spring. I'm working with Lori on this plan process. And the reason we added this policy, I think, was because it became clear when we were looking at routes to designate as bicycle facilities that we're missing future development opportunities. It's clear more in Eagle River, for instance, than maybe the hillside, where there's large tracts of undeveloped land that we just don't know what the development pattern is going to be or what the road system is going to be. So we can't put a road, we can't designate bicycle facilities in there. The only option we could foresee to get adequate bicycle facilities in these undeveloped areas was to require, through a policy, the development of bicycle facilities in conjunction with new development that required collector streets or above. During the development process, when they plat a subdivision, they're required to go through and designate collector streets. It becomes more obvious once you lay out the grid system and the development pattern which streets are going to get the heaviest traffic and which are going to be, in essence, collectors. So until those new developments occur, we don't know what the collectors are going to be. But when it is identified in a new development, the policy would require that bicycle facility be built in conjunction with those new collector streets. There's only one instance I know where there's been some pre-planning for subdivisions and the street system in the subdivision, and that's in the area to the south of Air Mountain Road and Bear Valley Elementary School, where the traffic director worked with developers in that area and in fact, there was multiple developers or owners of land in that area, and worked with them to try to pre-plan the road system. In that area, there is identified collected streets that extends from Air Mountain Road south into that area. And that's
Is that Mountain Air?
Mountain Air, sorry.
Mountain Air.
Air Mountain. Okay, Mountain Air, thank you. And that road was, at least in the circulation plan, was anticipated to be a collector. That's one road, and I think we actually have that identified on the plan as a red line going south of Bear Valley Elementary School. So in that case, that's the only case where we know enough about the future circulation where we had confident that we could designate an actual bicycle facility. In the other areas, particularly in the Eagle River and Chugach, it's not possible to do that. And we're hoping that that policy would fill in the gap there. And the policy is on page 56, policy 1.2.
Where? Which document are you looking at? Are you on this? For the policy 50?
Sorry, we're in the summary where we've rewritten things. I just thought it'd be easier to pull up page 56 of your packet.
Okay.
Sorry. It's policy 1.2, designated continuous and direct network of bicycle infrastructure on all collectors and arterials. I think that's the one we're looking for.
Which page are you on now? Big number 56? Big number 56. Policy number what? 1.2? Oh, okay.
I would say from my part, that sounds acceptable to me. With that, thank you. Commissioner Yoshimura, did you want to propose some wording in there?
Give me a minute. I would add, I would propose action item recommendation number 6. Establish a clear policy regarding the maintenance, regarding the responsibility for maintenance of the bicycle facilities.
Through the chair, could I make a friendly amendment to that?
Yes.
What about an access, public access? Would you add that to the phrase? Not just maintenance, but public access?
Responsibility regarding the maintenance. Yes, I would accept that.
So would we establish a clear policy regarding the public access and responsibility for maintenance?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I think the two go together. If there's going to be public access, then there has to be public maintenance. Thank you.
Do we have sort of concurrence on that amongst us? Okay. Very good. And that would be under policy 1.2, action item 6.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so we're done with 46 then? Okay, moving on to 57. Actually,
Staff, do you have any heartburn with that, or is that okay?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Oh, okay, good, okay.
Actually, 57, I recommended pulling, but I'm actually okay with that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Move on.
You were going to pull, then you changed your mind.
So
Okay, 63.
63, this is, again, just, I believe there's a simple rewording. So I would, it says, all future delete bridge upgrades or new construction of collector roads that add and bridges shall include provisions for bicycle facilities. And I think that's probably what was meant, that upgrades and construction of bridges and collector roads get bike facilities. Do you want me to read it as I'd have it? I would have it read, all future upgrades or new construction of collector roads and bridges shall include provisions for bicycle facilities.
Okay, so that's action item 5.
Action item under policy 1.15, correct?
Okay, so all future upgrades or new construction of collector roads and bridges?
Correct.
Okay. Shall include provisions for bicycles. Any concerns about that? Okay.
Cost a lot of money. Because if a bike path is attached to a bridge, it has to be built to the same standard as the bridge. So if you've got a bike path and if you've got a bridge and it's, 20 feet wide, and your bike path has to be 10 feet wide, then, you've increased the cost of the bridge by 30%.
Well, maybe staff can speak to that. It says bicycle facilities, which could be a separated trail, or it could also be bike lane paved on or painted on the road. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct. And as it stands, most bridges already include facilities as they stand. And
Of a certain size, but I'm thinking about lots of small bridges around Anchorage over creeks and that sort of thing that are going to need repair at some point in time.
But if they're not on a bike path, does it matter? If they're not on a designated trail or bike trail, does it matter?
Well, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say if it's on the,
You're right, maybe it should.
it should say that.
I mean,
If it's in the-
are we going to build, basically what the policy on this says, every single bridge, we got to fix it up for bikes, but what if we don't have a bike trail there designated? Do we need to do it?
Well, my feeling on this is that what you face now, a bicycle facility can be as small as the bike lanes painted on the road, so it's not necessarily anything very substantial. But now when you come right along and you hit some bridges, you lose, and if you're heading down the Seward Highway, for example, you lose all your shoulder, and you have a guardrail right here and cars right here for lack of a couple feet. So now we have nothing, and I think we should have something on bridges that gives you room to ride your bike. Can you Is there some other wording here? Are there examples of bridges that shouldn't have room for a bike?
I can't think of any. I mean, even in Portland, what they've done is they've sometimes put things on different levels. You know, or retrofitted. So it's certainly possible to do.
That's even more expensive. You know, I understand this is part of a transportation plan per se, but I think at some point in time, we have to look back and say, what is the cost of what we're doing in relationship to the number of users we're going to facilitate? And I think we need a core bike plan. I recognize the need that it is, for a limited number of people, a means of transportation. But I think to require every bridge that's going to be built or to be reconstructed to require a bike path or a lane when it may not connect to anything, when it may not connect to another path or lane, is an unnecessary burden on the taxpayers at this particular point in time. So, I think it's a problem. So I would not support John's addition.
Okay, what we'll do on this one is we'll pull this one,
Okay.
and we'll deal with that as a as a thing we'll deal later. So we'll pull that one. Okay. Item 66.
I would support the recommended change that staff did not support. And the recommendation is improve connectivity of the bicycle facilities, and it deletes the road network to allow continuous travel. And the support for this was that there are some places where you might put a greenbelt trail or an off-road trail that would create a continuous bicycling connection. And by using the phrase the road network, which is in the plan now, it suggests that you need to put a road there, or you could only have these facilities next to a road. And I think that goes the opposite way that we really want to do that. That continues the environment where, you know, roads are the dominant way of getting everywhere, as opposed to some places where we could, you know, run a trail and not have to have a road next to it. Support for this, you know, from the commenter was that, or as a trail through the UMed area and some of the trails through Far North Bicentennial Park. So I support the change recommended and not staff's recommendation not to make the change.
Commissioner Weddleton, we concur with that. I start thinking of roads like Elmore across Rabbit Creek, where it would be great to have a facility in there for bicycles, but yet I think a road is a long time coming, so I concur.
Okay.
This obviously doesn't prevent you putting bicycle facilities along roads because they're already mentioned there, but this also allows you to use trails to connect also. So, okay, so we have agreement on any objection on that one? Okay.
Okay, 68. This is, I don't know if I agree or not. It says avoid implementation of multi-lane roundabouts on high-volume roads that are designated as bicycle facilities. But my comment here is avoid the best thing there. Is that about?
Well, Perhaps I can explain a bit. We recently had some people here that are working on some special changes to the MUTCD, which is the traffic control devices, and they've been looking a lot at roundabouts, and most cities in the U.S. are only building single-lane roundabouts now. So they were wondering why we keep going with these multi-lane roundabouts, and it almost seems like that's the new trend, to keep them single-lane roundabouts. If you can picture the Elmore one, even the Huffman one is just a single lane, because the outer lane doesn't get involved in going all the way around. And it's certainly safer for pedestrians as well as bicyclists, and less confusing for vehicles. So that's where we were going with this one.
Okay. I'm one of the 1%ers they were talking about, and I go through those double lane ones. I don't have any problem. So, and when I drive through them, I really like them too. So, okay, well, I withdraw anything on that except the staff's response.
Through the chair, I do have a comment on that particular one. That is actually on page 55, policy 1.1, number 6. If you go to page 55 of the November 2nd book and read number 6, it sounds to me like bicycles will take a higher priority than motorized vehicles on high-volume roads. I have a big problem with that. We are still a motorized community, and that needs to take priority over bicycles. Now, maybe I've misread that, but that's what it seems like to me that number 6 is telling me.
Perhaps you could suggest some rewording, because what we were trying to get at was, well, just making things safer. So maybe we haven't hit on the best wording here.
It's this one right here.
So through the chair, then, that is really a safety wording that you're talking about, and not just a policy in general of where, because it says policy 1.1 is improve connectivity of road network and include bicycle lanes and road improvement projects. And then I jump to number 6, and it says avoid implementation of multi-lane roundabouts. I just don't want to change how our roads are set up because we want to put we think a bike lane is important. I just don't want to run over the top of what vehicles are important. And multi-lanes work for large vehicles. I have company vehicles that cannot make it through the single-lane roundabouts. And the double-lane roundabouts are really important to commercial vehicles. If we get rid of them for bicycles, what is our priority, bicycles or the general public?
Through the chair, I could address that if I may. In general, we aren't recommending bicycle facilities on really high-volume roads to begin with. You'll notice in the plan we don't make recommendations for on-lane bicycle lanes on Tudor, on street on Northern Lights and Fifth Avenue. So I don't think there's going to be very many conflicts between this policy and what your concern is to keep traffic moving and accommodate traffic. I think what we found, though, in reviewing the literature is that it looks like the double-lane roundabouts are problematic for bicycles who are using the traffic lanes. It's not really conclusive yet. I don't think there's been enough studies, but there's enough out there that it seems like it may be hazardous for bicyclists. That's why we recommend avoiding that on bicycle routes. So I don't believe there'll be a lot of conflicts, first of all, and I think second, it is a good policy, given what we know about safety.
Through the chair, then, do I misunderstand that you're suggesting that there should not be any multi-lane roundabouts, then? Because that's what I just heard just a moment ago, that you were suggesting there not be multi-lane roundabouts, but everybody in the States is not doing that. I'm concerned about losing multi-lane roundabouts because it's so difficult to get through the singles.
Through the chair, it's really not the place of the bicycle plan to make recommendations regarding the number of lanes and roundabouts. We're only recommending that bicycle routes avoid those double lanes. And as far as whether or not they're going to put in double lane roundabouts, that's up to the traffic engineers and the designers.
Through the chair, thank you. I think I misunderstood the direction of the comment. So I don't have any problem with the wording.
I might, maybe we could hit something that would help. Did you? Sorry.
When I read that, though, I think what you're really saying is you don't want to have bicycle facilities where you got multi-lane roundabouts rather than multi-lane roundabouts where you have bicycles. In other words, you want to keep bicyclists out of these high-volume roads. That's really, I think, the important thing, rather than saying, well, we're not going to have multi-lane roundabouts on high-volume roads. So we may have, gotten the cart before the horse, or... Go ahead.
Yes, through the chair, I did misunderstand that. And they're correct in what they're saying. I misunderstood it.
But are they saying it right now? I mean, what are you really trying to say? You saying no bikes where there's high volumes of traffic, or are you saying no multi-lane roundabouts where there's bikes?
You're right. I think it should be flipped around that way, so it's not so misunderstood. But I do think their intention is not what I was thinking. But I do believe it should be flipped. I do believe it should be avoid implementation of bicycle facilities on multi-lane roundabouts or high-volume roads. Is that correct?
Well, I would support that, but I don't think that was the intent of this sentence.
I can't second guess you. I don't know what you're trying to say, but the way I read it, it says if you got bicycles, you don't have multi-lane roundabouts, and I really don't think that's the intention.
I could see the source of the confusion. I'm not sure I have the wording answer right off the top of my head, though. I mean, the intent is to avoid multi-lane roundabouts on bicycle facilities. And maybe the wording is misleading in that we're saying avoid, just to do away with multi-lane roundabouts because it might conflict with bicycle facilities. But I think we might need some time to work on the wording to make it clearer.
Okay. Mr. Weddleton's got
I'll go out with that. I would not want to word anything that says no bicycle facilities, because that could include an adjacent path that doesn't put you in the traffic lane. So we wouldn't want to say that. But here, try this on. Avoid placing core routes on high-volume roads with multi-lane roundabouts.
I think that would be good, except it doesn't give direction to designers who might want to know whether or not to put multi-lane roundabouts on a bicycle facility. So it just tells the bicycle planners what to do. It doesn't tell the traffic engineers what they should avoid.
But do we really know if multi-lane roundabouts are evil? I mean, I lived in France for a number of years, and I rode a bicycle all the way around the Arc de Triomphe all the time, and that's about 20 lanes wide. So.
I agree with you that maybe maybe we could change this to say further investigate the safety of multi-lane roundabouts and bicycle facilities. The compatibility of multi-lane roundabouts.
Well, we could sort of pull this one and set it aside and let you guys come back with a new suggestion, let you think about it rather than do it on the fly tonight. I have no objection to that. Just you sort of got the sense of what we're talking about here. So is that agreeable? We'll relook at that particular one, number 68.
Okay, so moving on to 69. This, I guess I'm just looking for a little more clarification here. Are you recommending that bike funding be a fixed percent of the transportation enhancement? So don't we say there's 10% or 15% of road projects will go to transportation enhancements? And this would allocate it to bikes?
Through the chair, we were not suggesting any certain percentages be put in. We were not agreeing with the issue to change the wording. There is a group, AMATS goes ahead and figures out transportation enhancements. In many cases, the bicycle facilities would just be part of the road infrastructure to begin with, so it wouldn't even be considered an enhancement. It would just be part of the roadway. And in fact, on the latest capital improvements plan, we are putting in money to look after the bicycle plan, just as we have been putting in money to look after projects in the pedestrian plan.
So isn't there a statement in here, though, where you recommend a certain, like, earmarked money or certain percent in the plan? Or am I just getting that notion out of reading the comment?
I don't remember putting a percentage in. It's really scary to start putting percentages for items like this in. AMATS has their own system, and we're just trying to complement the existing plans, not dictate new numbers.
Okay, well, I agree with that. So I thought there was something in here that recommended a certain...
On page 56, under that action item 1, it's very, very general. It just says, establish a separate designated fund for the bicycle facility improvements in the MOA capital improvement program, similar to what was created for pedestrian improvements. So that's about as squishy as you can get.
Okay. Well, I'm satisfied with that then, if it's 69. Okay, moving on to 77. The question is to add signs along bike routes that say bikes belong. I believe in the thought. I don't want more signs out there. And is this, are these like attached to the bike route signs, or what are we talking here?
Through the chair, we did not concur with adding more signs. We just wanted to join the Bikes Belong program, which is basically the League of American Bicyclists, which just honored us with a bronze. It'd be really difficult to talk the traffic engineers into more signs, so I agree, but they just have a program about different educational, so we probably didn't word this one very well. Basically, we wanted to add the program, not the signs.
Okay, so you would add just this E, establish a connection to Bikes Belong, but you're not talking about putting signs up?
Correct.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
So you'd be replacing what's in there currently, which reads, establish a wheels yield to heels campaign? And so you're going to establish a connection to the Bikes Belong program for purposes of awareness? Who made that wheels yield to heels thing up?
I think that's an additional item, isn't that correct?
Yes, you're correct. I'm sorry, I couldn't find it.
Okay. Okay, now we get into, well, issue 94 and 95 and 96. And these basically are relate to recommendations for Title IX, which is the traffic law. And none of the, I believe all the recommendations here came from me, and none were accepted. And the kind of a big issue that I think really hurts bicycling and walking in Anchorage is that their crosswalks in Anchorage are not designed, and crosswalk law is not written to protect pedestrians in the crosswalk. The crosswalks exist to direct pedestrians so they don't hurt the flow of cars. And that's really very clear on the fact that the law says that you don't even have to stop for pedestrians in a crosswalk. You can enter a crosswalk while there's a pedestrian there, and you only have to slow down if need be. So you don't have to even slow down for pedestrians in crosswalks. And this is a real problem when you have 3,000-pound vehicles coming directly at you when you're trying to enter a crosswalk. And you're foolhardy to do that. If cars can turn right, if you have the white light, they can enter the crosswalk, and they're not going to stop and let you get into that crosswalk. They're going to keep coming at you. And you have to be very brave to get into that sidewalk. And this is a terrible thing in this city. And you can have all the facilities you want. My kids aren't going to cross those streets well because those 3,000-pound cars are coming directly at them. And you can give me a white light, they're not going to step in front of this car. Okay? So what we need in this town is stop for pedestrians in crosswalks. And with the existing law, Title IX, bicyclists in those crosswalks are treated as pedestrians. They have all the same rights and responsibilities. So until it says stop for people in the crosswalk who are legally in the crosswalk, we have no safety in crosswalks. So change the little window we get for safety for pedestrians in state and city law is that if an area, wherever it is designated a safety zone, then cars aren't allowed to go there. And what I've asked here is that crosswalks be, in the definitions, called a safety zone. And what that does is then cars have to stop. They can't go in that crosswalk while you and your kids or you and your bicycle, whoever it is in that crosswalk. To me, it's very reasonable. It's long overdue in this town. And if this is a plan for bicyclists, and I wish I was here for the PED plan because I'd have brought it up then, we need to say stop for pedestrians in crosswalk. So my little baby step towards doing this is to say a crosswalk with a pedestrian, which would include bicyclists, legally crossing is a safety zone. So I think in the varied responses here it is, well, they're working on Title IX now, and it's too late to make that change. But in fact, it's not too late to make that change. We had numerous changes for septic systems in the Hillside District Plan that we recommended, and I would say this is the plan to make this kind of recommendation for Title IX, particularly because they are actively changing it right now. And it's not too late. It's legal now. It will be going to the Assembly's Public Safety Commission, and I would hope it would go after they've gotten a look at this plan.
Through the chair, would it be appropriate to add this as an action item then to propose changes to Title IX to designate safety zones and crosswalks as safety zones?
That was my intent. I think I phrased it as implementation step, but that might be, you would say, an action plan. It'd be a recommendation that they consider that.
Mm-hmm.
Through the chair, John, I do disagree with you. When you enter a crosswalk on a red light, if you cross into one with a vehicle, it is considered running a red light, and you can get a ticket for that. So making a safety zone, I'm not really sure what your point is, but they already are in error, and it's really a traffic enforcement thing, and I don't know if we want to handle that from the bicycle plan.
I'm sorry, but I missed your point on the red light?
If it's a red light and a vehicle enters the crosswalk, Like you're talking about people getting intruded upon when they're walking through a crosswalk, that a vehicle enters the crosswalk. You're talking about making it a safety zone. Well, if they enter the crosswalk, it's a moving violation. They've run a red light. If you enter a crosswalk with your vehicle,
Right.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
It is running a red light.
Yeah, the danger is not cars. I mean, there's a danger. I got hit last year with a car coming into it in that case. That's a very common accident there. What it is turning vehicles. It's vehicles turning right is typically the problem, and this plan backs that up. It's when, and the PED plan does too, your danger is when these cars are stopped, but someone wants to turn right. It's directly into you, and cars can be in the crosswalk with you.
So are you saying this change would create a situation that no right turns would be allowed if there's a crosswalk?
No, you just can't go in the crosswalk when a pedestrian is legally crossing it. Correct. If there's no pedestrian in the crosswalk, you turn.
I guess I have a question for staff, and that would be is, I understand what you're trying to get to, but I'm not sure that the bicycle plan is the avenue to get there. And, you know, the law is, and part of it is the officer's discretion. If you're already in motion and your rear wheels are still in the crosswalk when the light changes red, you're now in violation. If you stop before the crosswalk and there are pedestrians there and you creep into the crosswalk, you're in violation. So I'm not sure what your change would be. And I mean, I like the idea of adding bikes to the same as pedestrians. I like that portion of it. But I'm not sure that this is the avenue to get you where you want to go for the pedestrian safety zone. So I guess maybe how would this get us to that? I don't know. Maybe staff can answer that.
I'm not sure either because, through the chair, this is something that a committee's been working on all year, and it's totally separate from this plan. This plan is mainly reporting on what's in Title IX and offering ideas for changing it, such as the one that we brought up with the business district and not bicycling on the sidewalk in a business district. And that's being clarified through the Title IX changes.
Could we then maybe do some kind of statement in here that says supporting the concept that a bicyclist in a crosswalk be treated the same as a pedestrian, and that kind of a stay tuned as Title IX is being changed for additional changes to come within this report?
Well, the current status is that a bicyclist in a crosswalk is treated like a pedestrian, has that. So that's the current status. Although I would strongly hope to see reiteration of that then in this plan. I'd agree that that needs to be reiterated. This plan does make recommendations for changes to Title IX already. So this is just adding one more to Title IX. And while I agree with both your comments and Commissioner Dean's, that when you're talking about cars moving forward into a crosswalk, I'm sure those cases are running a red light or whatever. The issue is where bicyclists and pedestrians are in danger is turning. That's a very different situation. When cars can turn right on red and you're trying to cross, cars turn directly into you. That's typical. It's a very significant danger.
I guess I would like to suggest that maybe on this particular issue, I need a little bit more background information before I can make any assumptions and a direction to support or not to support, so that I understand the laws, I understand what the implications are, and if Title IX is already changing, maybe what we need to do is we need to have some kind of input on what's happening with Title IX.
It appears that item 94 and 95 are really quite closely related, whereas '96 is a different thing. But I mean, again, if we're having them coming back to us on item 68, they could come back to us on item 94 and 95.
If I may, I think we have some proposed language for 68. I mean, our preference is to try to, we're pretty close here. If we've just got a couple, try to hammer through these right now, if we can get your concurrence with them and move on, move this on to the next step. if there is a general policy intent that I think Mr. Welton was trying to get at, and it can be introduced as an action item, you can float that as a body and see if you all concur, and if you do, I think staff would probably concur with that. If not, we would probably encourage that you not hold up the plan just for that one piece.
Okay, that's your opinion. Thank you.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, on page 63 of your packet, the big 63, is policy 4.3, encourage consistent enforcement of laws that affect bicycle operation, and that's the section where we talk about revising Title IX. So it may be appropriate to add something, to add another action item in here.
Through the chair, I recognize that right turn on red, whether you're in a car or you're a pedestrian, can be dangerous. People do take turning right on red they do it all the time, whether they have the right of way or not. And I do like it here that you do have it in policy 4.3. Now, I do want a clarification on the action item list. Does that mean that there's like a committee formed? Can you clarify for me exactly how an action item is handled if something is turned into an action item? What happens to it?
Well, what would, through the chair, what would happen is we haven't had a committee yet. We could certainly form a committee, but usually we then can go, and if we hear that there's something happening with Title IX, which I've done this summer, is go to their meetings and say, here's what we're interested in changing, and then we try and make it happen. So it's mostly me right now.
So through the chair, then, you are the action item list person. Okay, great. I think I understand now. So then, through the chair, that means that if the wording that John Wendelton would like on 94 and 95 would mean that those items go on the action item list and not necessarily make changes to the bicycle plan. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, we're looking for general statements to add in. But so we could turn number 94 into a general statement. Establish a safety zone in crosswalks for pedestrians as part of Title IX changes, something to that effect. I'll let you deal with it.
Establish, well, could you, 94 and 95 are very close. Could you just suggest in the changes of Title IX that they consider this change in the definition that I stated in issue 95? That really captures what's in 94. And then similarly in 96, which really just gets rid of an outmoded term. I mean, that seems pretty obvious to me. We don't say bike path anymore. Commissioner Yoshimura.
Yes, we concur with those changes, and we'll add them as action items. 4.3.
Okay.
Okay, so that's 94, 95, and 96. Okay.
Yes.
All right, well, 94, I think we've basically withdrawn. But just that 95.
We're folding it into 95.
Correct.
Kind of, okay.
94 goes into 95 is one, and 96 is...
Okay, is there any objection to those changes? Okay. All right, that takes us, I believe, to the end. As I see it, we had concurrence on everything except item 63 and then item 68 where we wanted to relook at the wording. So do we want to relook at the wording right now on 68, see if we can
Yeah, we both, Mr. Chair, we have, the staff's been busily working on it, and we have two versions of proposed for you. You can pick, see which one you like best and meets your needs. Number one, not necessarily in that order, is multi-lane roundabout designs should be avoided on designated bicycle routes unless adequate provisions are made for bicycle safety. That's, and the second one is Tyler's.
This just makes it wishy-washy. Where possible, avoid implementation of multi-lane roundabouts on high-volume roads that are designated as bicycle facilities and vice versa.
I like the first one.
Number one.
Okay, I think we got consensus on number one.
Who won that one over there?
You owe me a beer, I think.
Okay.
And what's the one that's left?
Okay, the only one that's left is item 63. Ms. Yoshimura, you had some concerns with that one. That was the bridge thing.
Could add where financially feasible to the end of that sentence.
Through the chair, that's a little fuzzy.
I know. You want to help me out, Ms. Dean?
Well, how about a limitation on the bridge thing, and I'll just suggest core routes.
Good.
I wonder if we could make it a little broader and say bicycle routes.
Okay.
Designated bicycle routes.
Designated bicycle routes.
Okay.
So
that would work for me, too.
all future upgrades on new construction of collector roads and bridges
On designated
bicycle routes.
Okay.
That works.
Now, would that limit collector roads to only those on designated bicycle routes, or do they all get?
All right, but I have a question on it then. Looking at these two maps, on this one you have your core bicycle network, and on this one you have designated bicycle routes.
Right.
The difference, and going back to Commissioner Yoshimura's comment,
A lot more.
we were talking about the difference of probably 10 times more facilities and bridges. And if the cost was what we're concerned about, this gives you your core routes, this gives you all of them, you're talking, the difference between what you just suggested is a huge difference. In a small amount of wording, but a tremendous amount of difference on it. So I guess I would just ask Commissioner Yoshimura, does that accomplish what you were trying to accomplish in the outline of that? Core routes,
Core routes, I think.
Core routes is somewhat limited.
Right.
But yet still provides the connectability.
Right.
And then the other routes, again, I mean, there's a huge cost difference between those two.
On core, so I would agree to core routes.
So core route is what you would be more inclined to.
I mean, I would assume that the core route designation indicates that there's a higher volume of bicycle traffic on those designated core routes. Yeah, I mean, is this true, Mr. Weldon?
I believe that's the intent. However, I actually don't think we'd have if you look just at the number of miles increase by saying, a bicycle route instead of core route, there just aren't that many bridges. But it's really important when we do this that we don't have, you have beautiful trails and one little discontinuous section, you have nothing. I think we have a case here we're under the Seward Highway that's famous with a beautiful trail and then it stops at the Seward Highway. I'm not familiar with it because I just don't go there because you can't get there. So you have to be sensitive. one bridge that doesn't have a place for you to go takes away the benefit of all these many other miles of trail that may lead up to it. So I don't think that you might have, 20 times as many miles of trails shown on Figure 11 compared to the core route map, but it's not that many more bridges. And we don't build bridges, they're expensive, so they're probably mostly on core routes anyway, aren't they? So with few exceptions.
And I understand what you're saying. And when I get out and I write, I know I've been in several places where all of a sudden you're going, how am I going to get through this next 3-4 blocks? And it is a problem. But the other problem is stated in the very beginning of this report when it says, how are we going to sell $109 million to those non-cyclists that are out there? And now, by changing that requirement on the bridge, that becomes a great factor for people going, no way, I'm not going to do this. So, part of, I guess, what I'm suggesting is this gives you a step to get there and a little bit at a time and add it on rather than, again, how are you going to sell it to the public? How's the public going to pay for it? And as we discussed a little bit ago, bike routes and subdivisions, if I'm going to be a developer and I'm going to develop the subdivision, I'm required to put a bike route in there. Now I've got the bike route that I put in. Who's going to take care of it? We're not taking care of the bike trails that we have going down the front of the waterfront already. And, I had one of my own employees that just attended a court case where somebody went off the road. The municipality was supposed to be keeping up with the upgrades, and they were sued because they did not, and that's what caused them to go off the road, and they got injured. So, it's very complex. And I'm like you, though. I like having it, and I'm sitting there thinking of all the connectability. I'm looking at these trails going, this is doing great stuff. How do we pay for it? And if we put that implementation in here, then that is what becomes law.
I'll give you a little, read something that's in our long-range transportation plan that to me speaks very loudly on why people who would never, ever, ever ride a bicycle should support more biking and walking, and any facility encourage more. And this is a quote, "The lesson from evidence across the nation is emphatic. Capacity cannot be added fast enough to build our way out of congestion. Other strategies are needed." And this plan, and the pedestrian plan, and the trails plan are those other strategies, are three of those other strategies. You've got to get some people off the road. You don't need to get half of them off the road. You don't need to get a quarter of them off the road. But if you have 10% of the people off the road during rush hour, you have smoother flowing traffic. You can make it dramatic. I'll let the professionals address that. But that's been shown. You don't need to take huge percent off the road to really increase the traffic flow. So if you can get more people riding bikes, if it's 3, 4, 5% of total trips, you've done a very important thing.
And I wouldn't argue with you. You're looking at a guy who's looking at about getting rid of his powerboat and going to a sailboat. So you're preaching to the choir. I understand. It just comes back down to cost. And how much can we push in that cost, how fast? And I think that's where the resistance is going to come. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to have a plan that we throw out there and people go, I'm not going to support it because this just costs too much. So it's a compromise, I guess, is what I'm suggesting on it. So,
and I think you take incremental steps. And I agree that there are utility bicyclists. I've learned that, and I've learned that phrase by reading the bicycle plan and by listening to the public testimony. And as you know, I'm a recreational biker. I'm not a utility biker. But, I think there's other forms that we need to take into consideration as well, which is the walkability of a community. And you can take people out of the cars by encouraging them to walk. And I think that's particularly true in Midtown and downtown. And I know from my own personal experience, I would walk to lunch every day in Midtown if it was a more pleasant experience. But it's a terrible experience, 36th Street, C Street, A Street, Couplet, and all that sort of thing. It's not a pleasant experience to do that. So I agree that we take small steps. And I do think bridges are one of the most expensive things a community can build. And I think we need to approach this in moderation. So I would support the core plan.
Any further comments? Is there concurrence on the core plan?
Well, I'd go ahead with that then. So it's all future upgrades or new construction of collector roads.
Let's reverse the order, so we eliminate that confusion.
Okay.
So say all future upgrades or new construction of bridges on core bicycle routes and collector roads. That eliminates the possibility of lumping the collector roads into the core thing. Right?
Okay. Yeah, that's very good.
Okay.
Could you state that again, please?
All future upgrades or new construction of bridges on core bicycle routes and collector roads shall include provisions for bicycle facilities.
Okay, so do we have concurrence on that? Okay, looks like we do. Okay. All right, I think we're done, folks.
Move to come out of committee.
I believe we need to get out. Okay, we got second. Any objection to going back into our normal arrangement? None. Okay, we're back as the commission. We need a positive motion to accept these items, and let's do them by number. So there's no misunderstanding. Moved by Mr. Littleton and seconded by Mr. Morrison. Okay, you want to go ahead and read the numbers and what we've got?
I'd move to approve the changes we recommended in the issue response dated November 2nd, 2009, while we're in Committee of the Whole. And those issues are 15, 17, 19, 25, 42, 43, 46, 63, 67, I'm sorry, 66, 68, 69, 77, 94, 95, and 96.
Is there any objection? That passes unanimously. I have nothing further, but I'd like to... findings.
The whole thing?
Oh, my goodness, findings.
Do we pass the whole thing, or is that done piecemeal? Have we done that piecemeal?
We've done... That wraps it up.
Well, I'd like to speak to it then.
You may.
Okay. Regarding the bicycle plan, case 2009-120, about a list of findings, and one is that this plan has met the comprehensive plan goals. Number 37, regarding design and construction and maintenance of roadways to accommodate bicycles. Number 45, regarding connecting local activity centers. Number 74, regarding level of service for transportation. And number 76, regarding optimizing existing transportation infrastructure. And I'd also like to read into it that quote from the LRTP, which says, "A lesson from evidence across the nation is emphatic. Capacity cannot be added fast enough to build our way out of congestion. Other strategies are needed." And this bike plan is one of those strategies. I'd like to recognize that this plan is intended to meet the needs of bicyclists who use bicycles as a form of transportation. This plan has received extensive review, well over 300 specific comments from over 250 participants. I'd also like to recognize in the plan, it says that the American Community Survey findings for 2006 show that Anchorage is ahead of the nationwide average for trips to work by bicycle, but far behind other cities, including Minneapolis, a city with a winter climate similar to Anchorage. And also that a study by the International Transportation Engineers shows twice the crash risk for bicyclists on separated pathways than riding on the road. The plan and Anchorage's bicycle facilities do accommodate or does accommodate those who avoid close proximity to moving cars. The final plan recommendation shows over half the miles will be separated pathways or green belts. I'd also like to recommend that this is not a gilded plan for cyclists. It is a frugal plan that gets Anchorage the basics for utility cyclists. The plan states that the ideal goal of this plan would be to ultimately make all roads bicycle-friendly, consistent with national policies that are cited in Chapter 1. Although the proposed bicycle network described in this plan does not meet this ideal goal, it does create a functional bicycle network with spacing of approximately 1/2 mile between routes. Also, I'd like to recognize that the core network described in this plan links all major employment centers and town centers identified in Anchorage 2020 Comprehensive Plan.
So that we'll incorporate those findings, since we've already approved it.
Is it too late? What? Those don't get written in there?
Yeah, no, that we will incorporate those. We just got...
And I have copies for the secretary, so...
Very good. Okay, are there any further comments from commissioners this evening? Just like to thank you for working through this thing, and we did in fact complete it for you guys.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I was wondering if I could have a small request of staff. I was wondering, after the bicycle plan is reprinted, I was wondering if we could all get a copy of the bicycle plan, because the one that we have right now is older, an older version, and the same thing for the Hillside District Plan. It would be really nice to get that final copy, too.
Absolutely. What we do is once these plans are approved and formally adopted by the Assembly, then you will all receive copies.
I apologize, I forgot about the assembly step.
Yeah, unfortunately, they can reverse everything we've done. So is there a motion to go home? Looks like we got it. Any objection? There's none. We're done. Thank you.